This was inspired quite a few years ago now, or maybe back in 2009, when I had an exhibition at Parliament House, Canberra, called which was part of Portrait Artists Australia, called the Unsung Heroes. I had some connections with some firefighters in Victoria, so I decided that I would go down and paint a group of them for the Canberra exhibition. And just as I was about to go down and meet with them, the terrible Black Saturday fires happened, and so all firefighters were inundated and just completely swept up with the whole battle of the fires and everything. It was really, really shocking, and I know a lot of people were either knew of people or were connected with people in some way that, you know, were lost or impacted by those fires. They really were quite horrific. I didn't know whether to still go down or not, and about a week after the fires had sort of subsided a little bit, they said still come down, and they arranged to take me up so I could still see it. And what I witnessed was pretty horrific, and the firefighters were still pretty ashen and shaken and exhausted, and but when I saw the devastation and I walked through the blackened forest and there was nothing left, and homes, and walking through the ash was like sinking into snow. In every step you took, you sunk right down into this black ash that felt like snow, but it was ash, you know, and it was just incredible. And I got a real sense of what these firefighters had been through, and how brave they were, and the horrific circumstances that they were confronted with, and were brave enough to battle. And this is when I met this lady called Sandra. So, this was, she was one of the first firefighters I saw down there. So we arranged to, there's a group of the firefighters there. That was the large painting that I put into Parliament House, Canberra. So that's a few of them there when we were sort of out in the middle of the bush. And they took me up with the fire trucks and the four-wheel drive. So it was quite amazing. And anyway, this first lady I met was Sandra. And here we have Sandra. And I was always struck by Sandra, and she was one of the leaders of the crew, and she kind of looked after the guys, and she arranged where all the strike teams would go, and she had a pretty hectic job for about five weeks. Is everyone okay? Your mind is always thinking of safety, and it's focused on what needs to be done. I guess if I felt fear, I wouldn't be on the truck. I'd be home listening to everything on the radio. That's the reason why a lot of people can't be firefighters, because of the fear of it. Sometimes it isn't easy, but you haven't got time to be scared. And I was really struck by Sandra. She was such an amazing person, real salt of the earth character, and she really left an impact on me. I was quite inspired with all the work that she did and how much she cared for her community and how she put herself on the line to fight those fires. So when I came back, I was so inspired by these firefighters and what they do. I thought, gosh, you know, why aren't we hearing more about these amazing people and what they're doing? And being a portrait artist, I love to capture the faces of these amazing people and hear their stories. And the more I heard their stories, I wanted others to be able to hear these stories as well. So this is how the Face of Extraordinary series was inspired. So when I came back to my home to the Northern Beaches, and I thought, well, you know, they're in their community. These amazing people are in all our communities. We just sort of really need to hear more about them. And I've got a daughter as well, so I want our kids to be able to hear more about these inspiring people, because, you know, they just give so much hope and all the rest of it to what we do. So anyway, I then thought, well, I've got to find, who can I find around here? So I approached my local council to see if they could help me out to source some amazing people, and they really liked the idea of, at the time I only had an idea, so they liked the idea of it, and they helped source some volunteers in the area that I could get connected with. And so that's how the whole thing how things started to go. And one of the first ladies I met was a lady called Angelica, and she is the Manly Penguin lady down in Manly who looks after all the little penguins, and they kind of live under the wharf there, and it's amazing. You would never know that there was a little colony of penguins living under there, but they really battle to survive against, civilization. So she loves the fact that it's a nice little surprise if you came to Manly and you just happened to see a penguin there. It's like, wow, there's a penguin there in the middle of the city. So she says they're actually called little penguins. The other day was the last full moon. That's when all the penguins came out. They like the full moon. Even the smaller ones who normally hide under the jetty came out, and they were all dancing in a line along the water's edge in the sparkling moonlight. And their chests were glistening, and they looked so precious, just like fairies. In that moment, I understood why people often call them fairy penguins. Their flippers look like little fairy wings, and they're so beautiful. I still call them fairy penguins. They have such grace when they dance. And I was just struck by how much she loved these penguins, and she just dedicates her life. And anyway, I sat down, I met Angelica at a coffee shop in Manly. We got chatting, and she was talking about her life and how she battled she was in the demonstrations in the war against the Vietnam War and back in Germany, and how she lost her job and came to Australia. I thought, gosh, this lady's story is just amazing. So it was at that point that I decided to capture the stories of all these amazing people too, and how their lives progressed and how they came to end up doing what they do. So I captured all the stories in the book as well. So and here we have this amazing lady called Angelica with her penguins. She really is quite extraordinary. And she's becoming a bit of a celebrity herself these days. She's quite well known sort of around the Northern Beaches area. So so I went on my little journey, and then I met a man called Lawrence Hurst, who said, there's an old army saying, anyone who volunteers is either a fool or they've misunderstood the question. So what does that make me? Well, Lawrence was an amazing man. He survived the Vietnam War as an ex-Vietnam vet, and he came back from Vietnam and worked for a while in mining, but then he ended up really, really ill. He was in hospital for about 3 months from all the chemicals they were sprayed with from the war, and he almost lost his life. And at that point he decided to turn his back on society, and he went homeless for about 20 years. But eventually he got his life back on track, and he now is a great advocate for helping the homeless himself, especially the hardcore homeless who've been on the street for a very, very long time, and just to try and get them, when they're ready, back into society and back on their feet and start it again. So he's also a very, very incredible man. So I went on and I just kept meeting all these wonderful people. Dr. Howard Ralph, an amazing man. Life would be a lot easier if I'd never known about it. However, once you reach that degree of enlightenment about what is actually happening, I suppose it becomes the original agony and the ecstasy. The ecstasy is being able to help. The agony is to witness the suffering and be aware of it. Dr. Howard's just another man who had an incredible story, a very talented, gifted man who is a doctor and a vet, who used to have a practice down the south coast many years ago, where he used to treat both. His patients would be human and animal variety, so the whole family, and the dog and the cat and the goat would all go at once. So, but he said it became very chaotic, and anyway, eventually he dedicates his life now to protecting Australia's wildlife, because he saw the critters were really under threat, and it was really hard to get them back, rehabilitate them and get them back out into the wild. So he dedicates his life now just to completely saving wildlife, possums, wombats, he will operate. You know, he's an amazing surgeon, so he operates day and night to help these little critters and get them back. And there's no critter he will turn away. He'll try, you know, whatever he can. I heard one of his recent patients was a blue-tongued lizard who had a huge hole in the side of his belly where he'd been taken by a dog, and that he had to undergo an incredible amount of surgery to be put back together. So he's very dedicated to those animals. And I know this week he was in the paper, he just won a huge volunteer award himself. So. And I came across a lady called Meredith Rasdall. She's well known in the arts community also. Life is not always easy, but if you're really passionate about something, people are attracted to your energy and will come and help you achieve that goal. It always amazes me. Meredith had an amazing story now. She dedicates her arts life to helping youth and arts and get kids recognised for the talent that they have. And she created something called Art Fest many years ago. It's been going for about 13, 14 years now. And it's very popular in the Pittwater with the kids. She created it so it's a free event. Kids get to have an exhibition of all their artwork. And also they have a day called Art in the Park where all the kids come to meet local artists and get hands-on and do all sorts of creative stuff that they would never get to do any other time. So another wonderful lady from our Northern Beaches area. And I met another incredible man called Jeff Ryan. He said, you look at world poverty and you ask the question, can poverty end in our lifetime? Rather than getting disillusioned by that, I'm going to help my neighbour who is elderly and needs a hand, and then I'm going to help a fisherman in Chile who's lost his home from the earthquake. After that, I'm going to West Timor to help displaced people living in a refugee camp. By helping one person at a time, the next person in front of us, I believe the impact we have on one person will be passed on to another. Jeff Ryan has started an organisation called Misfit Aid. They do a lot. Jeff's quite an amazing entrepreneur. He's just closed down his shop, which was Sugar Mill Surf at Narrabeen, but they still make a lot of surfboards. And what Misfit Aid does is harness the surf community to go to zones or places which are impacted by disaster and help rebuild. So there's an earthquake disaster, or they'll take teams of guys and they will just go in there and help rebuild and help refinance as well. They'll do a lot of microloans, microfinance as well, and help, you know, third world countries and people start up businesses and that sort of thing too, and educate them. I want to save the world, or maybe just one bit at a time. I'll get there eventually. There was a girl I met called Ellie Salmon. Well, Ellie was only 18 at the time, so it was really good to show our youth as well. And Ellie she does a lot of surf life-saving, incredible kid, does a lot of fundraising for the shave, what is it, the biggest shave, greatest shave, and all sorts of breast cancer and all sorts of things. She's a big fundraiser, so it's great too. She also won Pittwater Youth of the Year a couple of years ago, so it's great to show the positive side of the youth too that are coming through and, you know, are quite focused on doing this. Dave Thomas, another amazing guy. He's part of the, he has an organisation called Eco Divers. This was an interesting little group of people in Manly who I stumbled on, who, because they're diving under the ocean, they get to see what's going on under there. So there's a lot of rubbish and plastics and all these sort of things. So they bring it up to the surface so that we can be aware of what's going on down there. So he's another incredible person as well. So, and this is Dave here as the eco diver. So they bring in awareness to what's going on under the ocean, which for most of us would be out of sight, out of mind. So And I'll just keep kind of flicking through these. Angela Van Boxtel, she did a lot of work for Bear Cottage, the children that are really, really ill. That's a respite centre for children. So she does a lot of arts workshops and things like that with children and their families. So it's quite therapeutic for them. Angela can be seen quite a bit around Manly, so all sorts. So she's always creating some kind of arts project around there as well. So Michael was another young guy who it was nice. It's nice to show that a lot of young people, when they travel, when they're young, he actually spent his time travelling to countries and helping out with turtles or just surfing. He was a surfer, so he would help out with all sorts of things as he was going along. So he wasn't at the time, but he's also now part of the Misfit Aid team as well. So another youth. Michelle Moffat, another lady in the project who helps out with the migrants, especially migrants that are coming that are quite well educated and have had good professions where they've come from. So she helps them get back into the professional workforce here and get the English skills that they need up to grades, and help them job search and that sort of thing. So so there's all sorts of amazing people out there doing. Cherie Graham, she has done a lot for Lifeline, a place called Toldamonde, a homeless children's shelter. So she's done a lot over the years with those sorts of things. So you can see it was quite a time-consuming little project going through each of these, meeting all these wonderful people. Joe Mills, a gentleman who, another local gentleman who is a driver for Manly Warringah Petwater Community Aid, as the elderly find it difficult to get around and get to doctor's appointments, get to shop. He will pick them up and take them where they need to go. So that's a great service for anyone who's, with a disability or been struck down ill all of a sudden or have an injury of some sort. So he's always smiling, so we kind of nicknamed him Mr. Smiley. Hannah Law, another amazing lady who works with Meals on Wheels. She was born and brought up in Germany, and she's quite elderly now, and she's probably older than a lot of the people that she's delivering Meals on Wheels to. So, but she's still very fighting fit and going strong. So she's another amazing character. Dilys Graham, we've all got, we've had our kids playing sports and things like that. We've got the parents that are dragged into the sports teams to help out. So Dilys was the president of the Avalon Soccer Club for many years when her boys used to play. So and that's Dilys there. She's got that lovely Irish skin that I really liked painting. It was very translucent almost. Ian Partridge, another gentleman that works with Youth Off the Street. Most of us have heard of Youth Off the Street. He's a mentor that goes in and helps kids who are either homeless, and when you think about helping kids just get their driver's licence and things like that, who don't have parents that they can rely on, he goes in and he will mentor kids and that sort of thing. So, yep. So that's Ian. So I'll just kind of keep flicking through some of these. I ended up doing about 21 volunteers altogether. Anthony was another one, another youth, a young one who's quite, who does a lot of bush regeneration, that sort of thing. So some of these portraits, Silke's with a project called the Two Hands Project, where they try to just, help people pick up a lot of rubbish and make them aware of what happens to, and they also save injured wildlife and that might be threatened by fishing line or plastics and that sort of thing. So they've got a great following worldwide now on Facebook alone. I think they've got 20 something thousand people following them now. Most people might be quite familiar with Laurie Morgan. She is the president of Pittwater Community Arts, and I love what she said. I think if people can do some form of art, it's very therapeutic. I used to say to my students, for the next 2 or 3 hours, you will not think about your bills, the fight you had with your husband before you left home, the children, or what you have to prepare for dinner. You will just paint and lose yourself in art, and it's just quite easy to do that, especially me. I do that quite easily. So there may be a few people here who know Laurie, so yeah, she's been doing that she's dedicated her life to that for many years. Linda Sawyer, so Linda was quite an interesting lady too, working with youth theatre and the kids. She's done that for many years. And Linda had an interesting mix of Papua New Guinea, Aboriginal and Australian, so she has this really fascinating face. Linda was also, some of these paintings I tackled in a slightly different way, whereas I worked from Linda from a grisaille and just used like a dead layer, no colour layer, and then built the glazes up over the top. And so I kept chopping and changing the portraits quite a bit just to add the interest and see if I could come at the same conclusion. Kathy Butler was another lady who works with refugees, an amazing lady. And I kind of left the last story with Tashi as he sort of spins me off into my next project. Tashi had a fascinating story, and he came from Tibet, and I had to laugh when he said in Western countries people are stressed and angry and tense. I want to say it's good to tell a friend or other people your troubles so they can give you ideas to help. Sometimes when you're working in a shop, people come in and if they can't find what they want, they get angry. I feel like I need to give them Reiki at times like this. He was very calming. So, and I could relate to that, going into a shop sometimes going, gosh, they've changed the shelves around, I can't find anything, where's it gone? So Tashi had an interesting journey from Tibet to Australia, so and he has quite a fascinating story, so I will go, and he also volunteers for the Tibetan community, and he's writing a cookbook himself at the moment, so but I will go more into his story in my next project. So this is kind of an accumulation of all the faces together, and I've now put all the faces, framed them all together, and will be spreading them around the community a bit more and bringing more awareness, hoping to bring more awareness to their causes and what they do, and hopefully so we can hear more about them. So I've got other talks coming up at the Mona Vale Library. We will probably include a lot more of the volunteers as well. So, anyway, working on they were quite time consuming. Some of these portraits could take me up to 5 days, a week, depending as I like to work. I build up in layers. The portrait of Silke, the one down at the bottom, second from the right, I actually built that one up with acrylics first, and then just did the final layers in oil over the top. I like to work with wax and oil and build up in thin layers because I like the the luminosity I get from that. I can scratch around, I can dig in and I can scrape things back and take paint off and put it back on. And so there's a few different methods I've used there, but mostly they're done in wax and oils. So the project, combined with the stories, the stories actually took as long as the paintings to do. So I would have to go and interview all the people and capture their stories and then get them all down into a book like this. So it was a really, it was a huge body of work, but it was really worth it, and I got a lot out of it, and I met all these fascinating people, and I learnt so much off all of them, and it was great to meet all these people and find out who they are and what they do in our community. I decided when I put the book together, because I come from a graphic design background, I was able to do a lot of the book layouts and design myself, but I did get a professional editor to help me with the editing of the stories, and which was really beneficial. So we worked as a team for quite a few months. When I worked with, when I interviewed Meredith Rasdell, the lady at the top who created Artfest, they needed someone to help run Artfest last year, so I kind of put my hand up and said, okay, I will, I'll do it. And it was a massive project, and then I was trying to get this project done as well. So at the end of Artfest, I was able to sprint through this project the last few months and really get it to the end and to the printers and back in time for the exhibition, which was happening in January, so we could really launch it and get it out there. So so that's pretty much it, really. It was just a very fulfilling body of work, and I kind of look forward to my next one. I've since gone on now, and I do a lot more teaching of portraiture as well, and we'll be doing a lot more workshops. The book's also now available in Berkeleau Books and Maynavale Art Shop for sale. So if anyone's got any questions about the paintings, or feel free to. Yes, I will plan another book. So I will be doing a different, more focusing on the stories of the refugees coming through. So that's why I left it at Tashi, the Tibetan guy in there. So that will lead into my next project. So yeah, there's some amazing, incredible people there, and it's quite fascinating to hear their journey. And also, it's a great study for me to study their faces and the life that is in their faces, and capture the soul and that comes through the people, and what they've survived, and how they move on and succeed here, you know, in their new life. So that will be my next fascinating project. So does anyone want to ask any questions about? Yeah.
Sort of a question. Looking at all the pictures up there, I know that the faces are the primary focus, obviously.
Yeah.
I was struck by the different coloured backgrounds.
Yeah.
Was there a reason for different colours behind certain people?
Yeah, there is actually. I'm quite. That's a good question, and I believe that a lot of people tend to have a colour that's just their colour, and that tends to make them pop. So sometimes I would try different colours with certain people, and it just wouldn't work. So it would either, you know, draw them back in or something. But if I found the right colour, they just seem to vibrate. So it's almost like an energy or something that I feel that, you know, goes with them. So I don't always get it right first time, but a lot of time I'm getting better as I'm doing more and more portraits, and I'm finding, looking at people, I can see a colour that works, that will work with them, or their colour, you know. So yeah, so and it just helps make them pop. So yeah. So anyone else?
Can you start by actually drawing with it, you know,
No, with these guys, I used a lot of photo reference because I had such limited time with them anyway because they were all so busy saving the world or doing whatever they want. And a lot of them specified they didn't, if they had to sit for hours, they weren't going to do it. So I had to work a lot from photo reference with these people. So and usually then I usually take quite a few, and people always tend to. And I do the interview first so that people and meet them a couple of times, so we're very relaxed. I like to get to know the people quite well, so that they're comfortable with me and I can find their true self, their natural self. So yeah, it's just, I liked the one-on-one too. I like to show the faces one-on-one because I just feel it's more engaging. It's almost like you can stand in front of that conversation, you've got the full, that person's full of tension, so and you can just almost feel like you can have a conversation with them. So I like to keep that focus and just find that character and that soul and very that part of the person, and that's what I try to strive to bring out in the portraits. So I'm always working on that and pushing that further and further and further. So. But like any type of artwork is a lifetime of learning. You never stop. You're committed to being a student. Even if you are a teacher, you are still the student, and you will be the student forever. So you're always learning and learning something new. So it'll be interesting to see how the portraits are coming through in, say, 5-10 years' time as to what I'm doing now. So I like people who. I often will go through the streets and I will see people that I find fascinating, or they might be quite decorative in some way, or they've got some kind of energy or something that inspires me. And I found a young lady, a young girl, a 12-year-old in Manly, busking one day with her huge harp and her lorikeet running across the top of her harp, plucking the strings and singing with her. And so I had to paint that one for an exhibition down in Melbourne.
That's in Melbourne, isn't it?
Yeah, the exhibition was in Melbourne. So yeah. Oh no, it's with the Mortimer Prize. So it's been travelling around for a while to various locations. So any other questions? Yes.
Just wondering, how long have you been painting?
Ah.
How long have you been doing portraits?
Well, I've been doing portraits now for 5 years or so. Actually, not that long. I was, because I was in the commercial art world, trying to make a living and ends meet for so many years. I just got to a stage where I thought, if I don't do it now, I just had this love for art and talent that I wanted to utilise, that I would never get the chance. So it was pretty much drop everything and just focus on art. It was kind of an overnight thing for me. So I walked. Yeah, well that's the first one I did. I thought, gosh, at the time when after being in the commercial world for so long and working in the city and in big, large corporate companies, it was really hard to get the creativity going again, and I felt quite blocked to a certain degree and was getting quite frustrated as to, so I started drawing, and I wasn't even sure if I could still draw after that amount of time. And working 9 to 5 and long hours, it's very hard to go home at the end of the day and, do the house and the dinner and then want to sit down and draw. You're just so exhausted from the day. It just became a pattern of doing it all over again the next day. So I did a drawing and I thought, okay, I can, it's a bit rusty, but the first drawing I did was an old man, wrinkly old man. I thought I'd start on something simple, and but I could still do it. It was, the bones of it was still there to work on. So I enrolled in Julian Ashton's art school, and I went there for a couple of years part-time, just getting back into the life drawing. I hadn't done that before, and I just took to it like a duck to water, and I just couldn't believe I had not stumbled on this earlier. I don't know why it just hadn't occurred to me. And I'd always had a love for portraits and faces and fascinating faces. And so I did my daughter at the time was about 4, so I thought, oh, well, I'll just do a huge portrait of her. And it was kind of the first real oil painting, big portrait painting I'd done. But it seemed to turn out all right. And a couple of ladies came to the door on their religious rounds and noticed I had a brush and a palette in my hand and said, oh, do you paint? And I said, oh, well, I'm trying to, but I'm kind of more realist. I like the realist stuff. And they went, oh, no, we do too. Show us what you've just done. And so I turned this painting around, this large painting that I'd just done of my daughter in her pink pyjamas and her hair everywhere and the buttons all done up wrong. And they were just blown away by it. And one of the ladies said, you've got to enter that in the Shirley Hannon Portrait Awards. And I said, are you serious? She said, yeah, you'll be, it'll get in. I thought. So at this time I'd still been studying with Julian Ashton's and following a lot of artists, Australian artists that I admired. And then so I thought, well, she said it's a week away, put it in, see how it goes. So I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. So I put it in and it got selected for the finals. And it just I was gobsmacked. So the whole family took the trip down to Bega and it was all very exciting. And there was my little painting hanging up with my other Australian artist idols that I'd admired for so long, and so it was a huge confidence boost from me, and so I never really looked back from that moment. I was dedicated to study and paint as much as possible and study as much as I possibly could about techniques and keep building on it. And eventually the ideas started flowing, and just so I went from being kind of blocked to just having so many ideas. I was starting to take on too much, so I've had to narrow down a little bit as well. So, and now I've stumbled on the mixing of wax with oils as well, which tends to suit how I like to work. So, and building up the acrylic underneath. So it's becoming more of a mixed media now these days as well. So every time I tackle a portrait, I always try to do something different so that I'm always challenging myself to learn something new. And with that comes a different quality in the work too as it grows. So, and I spend a lot of time observing and really looking at a face and studying it. So I try to say to the students, just observe, always observe, and just really study that face. Even if you'll sit there for half an hour and study it before you even attack it. It's almost like a chess game, anticipate the next move. So, so that's how it's grown from there. And I'm about to go back to New Zealand in a week. There is a mural that I painted about 30 years ago when I just left school, and the primary school that I did the mural for has treasured it for all these years, and they're having a huge school reunion, so I've organised to go back and help them. I can't even believe it's still in one piece, but we're going to rehash it and bring it back to life, and how the kids are going to help me do it. So that's kind of a fun little thing we're looking forward to. No, yeah, they'll already be there, but they'll be in acrylics. We'll be working in acrylics for that. So that's an exciting little thing to have, because so much history. The painting, the mural at the time was of the history of the town, and now the mural has become part of the history of the town. So we'll go back and the little town in New Zealand that I was from is called Manamatta, which is where the filming of The Hobbit took place. So it's been sort of renamed Hobbiton. So yeah, so I might have to go back and put some hobbits in that mural. So yeah, so that's a fun little thing I've got coming up, and I've got another talk coming up at the SH Irving Gallery as well, to talk about the painting that got into the finals there. So that will be the 7th of Sunday the 7th of April as well, coming up really soon. So there's a lot of things happening in the pipeline, and I'll be taking on a lot more teaching and workshop roles this year, which I'm really loving. And just from my studio at the moment, and but I will be sort of branching out and doing a lot more workshops, and 1 and 2 day workshops focusing on just portraiture, so just the face, the real study of the face with life models. So it's a great opportunity for students to really get in there and study the proportion and the form and the structure of the face. So teaching what I was trying to learn many years ago and unblock myself. So it does show, you know, I am quite happy with, you know, how it's progressed in the last few years. So I have been in the salon once before. I've entered the art world 3 times now, and I've gone into the salon twice. So I'm quite happy with that. So maybe next time, lucky. So I'll just have to keep practicing a bit harder. So, pardon? No, but if you know of anybody, send them my way. Oh yeah.
It was absolutely marvellous.
Yeah, with the possum and
They thought that.
yeah, the family. It stayed in the family.
They
So.
lent it to you to put into the archival?
Oh no, it's gone now. I have to move on and do something new now. So.
I like that.
So. Yeah. So anyway, that's about it. Anyone else got any more questions?
Did you start off with a marketing plan, or think this is where I want to go when you were
Look, being an artist and a visual person, I don't have a huge amount of business sense, but I did make myself learn how to, I use plans and quite a bit now. Goal setting, I set a lot of goals now, and I keep trying to achieve those goals, and I think that's what has kept me going, especially with a project like this, because it's so huge. You know, I just announced to the family, I'm going to do this, I'm going to paint everybody in, you know, the northern beaches, you know, and but the reality of that is you've got to break that down somewhat, because, you know, you don't realise how time-consuming the stories are and getting the portraits done, and especially when you like to get a lot of detail in the portraits like I do, that they can get quite time-consuming, so I almost get quite obsessive about it. So then I've had to learn basically as I go along. So I create things that make me learn and stretch myself into places I don't like to go to, that are a bit uncomfortable. But once I've moved into that place, I've done it, I feel, you know, it's like stretching yourself a little bit to do something different. And I guess that's how we grow and achieve each step that we need to along the way. So that's what this project was very much about, breaking it down into little steps and to keep it moving forward. Because if I looked at the overall huge picture of everything that had to be done, I just would go, well, you know, I'll do something else today. So, and because I had so many, all these amazing people behind me, it became, it almost came behind, I couldn't let them down. I had to keep going, you know, because they are just so incredible with what they do. If I couldn't do a couple of paintings because, you know, I just didn't feel like it that day, I just had to look at these people and just, it reminded me what they go through and, you know, how dedicated they are to their community, and that was enough just to keep me going, you know. So, so I'm learning, picking up a lot of artist business skills as I'm going, so.
When you say you use the wax and you get oil, is that mix that colour to get all different in the process? And you wax it and
I mix it with the colour as I'm working, so I use it like a medium, like you would a medium, like you.
the wax in solid form, or?
No, it's you can get it like, it's like a cold wax medium, so it's quite buttery in consistency. It's it's sort of quite soft. Hmm? Well, it's kind of a clear. It's clear. It's sort of white and creamy, so it doesn't really affect the ugly colour at all. So.
Can you put that on with a brush?
Yeah, you can use a palette knife, a brush, and yeah, there's all sorts of ways you can do it. Yeah, it's kind of quite thick and buttery. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I like the smell of it too, actually. It seems quite natural to me, and I like using natural products. So, and wax just seems to be a byproduct of the bees and things like that. And it just has a lovely smell about it. So. I was always fascinated by the old portraits, the Fayum portraits, the old Egyptian ones, the old original portraits they found buried in the Egyptian tombs with the mummies, and there were those old portraits, and they were made with encaustic, and they were kind of the first original portraits, I think, and had lasted, centuries basically. Yeah, long time. And I just loved the look of them and the way they were done, and that almost sort of erased kind of worn kind of look about them. Yeah, they just had a lovely quality. So and then once I started, I tried working in all sorts of different ways for quite a while until I stumbled on what I liked working with. I think most artists need to try as many different mediums as possible and just see where their preference lies. So, anyone else got more questions? Yeah.
We'll make that a wrap and give you a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank Derivan, Matisse as well for having me as a guest today. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks for coming, everyone.